Welcome to Camp Confidential, Beyond the Bars. I'm Katrina McLarin, and with my co-host Cheryl Womack, author, entrepreneur and philanthropist, we tell it like it is. In Season 1, we take you inside the walls of a women's federal prison camp. From pre-sentencing to navigating daily life behind bars, we offer practical advice, survival strategies and insights that no one tells you before you go in. No sugarcoating, no cliches. This podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only. Be sure to do your own research and consult a professional. Today's episode, Gone But Not Forgotten, is based off the book How to Go to Camp, Surviving in a Women's Federal Prison by Cheryl Womack, available now on Amazon. In today's episode, we talk to Dean, Cheryl's husband, and delve into his experience going through the process from the original embezzlement to Cheryl's eventual time in a federal prison camp to her ultimate release. Dean, when was the first time that you were made aware that Cheryl's confidant and person in charge of her day-to-day accounts, Brandy, had stolen from her?
I had suspicions based on the fact that she was buying a lake house in Hollister, Missouri, a boat, a new truck, a new car, trading in a Toyota Sequoia. I'm thinking, how does she do this on the money she's making and what her husband makes? And I approached Cheryl one day in the bathroom. I said, I don't know, but maybe you ought to look into this thing and see what's going on. And that was pretty much what I stopped. And then Cheryl took it from there. And her and Teresa, who was working for her at the time, started looking at all the transactions and noticed some iffy things. And that's how it's transgressed into that problem.
The indictment process, Cheryl indicated, was actually really quite a difficult process and might have been, at the time, the most strain that you guys ever went through. Did you find that hard, the injustice of it all?
Oh, yeah. I definitely found it hard. It was kind of weird in the fact that this started like in 2008, and we didn't know what was going on. We knew that they didn't send a target letter. They're supposed to send a target letter. Sometimes they do. If they want to do it in secret, they don't have to send a target letter. But most often they'll identify to you that you're under investigation. They didn't send a target letter. So we were going through everything, and with Brandy and her getting in trouble and all that stuff, almost time for it to reach the statute of limitations where the case would have been null and void. They wouldn't have acted. But I think it was a couple months before. They got 5-year statutory limitations to indict you or not indict you. And I think it was in September, November. That's when they told Cheryl that she was going to be indicted, and they took it to a grand jury and they indicted her in December of, I think, 2013. So for that 5-year period, we didn't know what was going on. They didn't investigate anything we knew about up front other than what Brandy had told them. And I guess they were looking into all the stuff that she had lied to them about and stuff like that.
How did you feel you were best able to support Cheryl through that time? Or did you find it quite isolating for you?
During the indictment period?
Yeah, during the indictment period.
That 5 years, we didn't know what was going on, so we just went about our lives. And then after the indictment, yeah, it really hit home that this was serious as a federal indictment. It wasn't a state indictment. We had to find an attorney, which we went through a couple before we found one that we thought we liked. And then that didn't turn out. And then we got the one that took the bulk of the case, but it turned out that she wasn't that great either.
No, and Cheryl's alluded to that fact and how that made her feel. She's also indicated that you also had your run-ins with this attorney as well, without going into any specifics. Did you feel that at the time, during that indictment process, that you weren't being very well represented, or Cheryl wasn't being well represented?
It was after the indictment. After the indictment, we hired our first attorney. He was an ex-FBI agent. They wanted thousands of dollars just to represent her, and then he was having issues because he was an ex-FBI agent, and he was worried that his buddies were going to get involved in all this stuff. So we got rid of him, and then we went to another one in California who we thought was really, really good. And turned out he flew out here and said, oh, you just need to make a deal. And that didn't happen either. So we left that and got another attorney, which we should have probably went with the one guy out in New York who probably had the most common sense of anybody in the whole case, but we didn't.
So during this time, as the legal bills are mounting and things are really dragging on, did you have concerns for your financial stability as well? Because I know that what happened to her impacted everyone that was in her world.
Well, yeah, you have issues with that because it's not cheap. These guys rape you over the coals, and it's a criminal case, so they can charge what they want to charge.
Did you have any concerns about your financial stability as a family unit going forward as the legal bills are mounting?
Sort of, kind of, but I knew that Cheryl had invested in a lot of good things, and she had a lot of stuff on the back burners, and we had some cushion. But yeah, when you're seeing millions of dollars go out the door, that adds up pretty quick. I wasn't too worried about it at the time, but over the period of 2 to 3 years, yeah, you start thinking about that.
If you could take me back a little bit to that weekend where both of you are in the attorney's office and Cheryl's under pressure to take that plea deal, what's your first reaction when the solicitor's really sort of pushing this hard?
One of two things said that Cheryl needed to make the plea deal because she wasn't going to take it to trial, and she wanted another $1 million to take it to trial where she's already charged millions of dollars to get to where she was at. But it went south. I mean, she was an ex-prosecutor out of the same office that was prosecuting Cheryl. She had friends over there, and I'm sure she was getting pressure from them to make the plea deal because the case was I don't know if it's winnable, but I'm saying that Cheryl had a really good case on all this stuff that happened during for example, if you want to talk about the case a little bit, Al Davidson, who was her CPA, he was charged civilly by the Department of Justice and a bunch of other people involved in that. And they said that he cost the government over $43 million. Well, they didn't indict him. They didn't criminally charge him. And he ended up getting an injunction so he didn't have to do taxes. It couldn't do taxes anymore. So that was Cheryl's CPA. That was the one who set up every process, every tax return, everything in the whole process. So if Cheryl was committing all these crimes, he set them all up. So, and he walks away scot-free, and they're still coming after Cheryl. For example, if you want to read about it, you can go to read about Alan Davidson. U.S. versus Al Davis is a civil case. Cheryl was not even involved in that case. And if you want to read about Cheryl, you can go look at her indictment and process in front of the magistrate judge. And you would think she was the worst tax crime cheat in the world if you would have looked at all the allegations they made against her. But they never did charge her with tax fraud or tax evasion. They charged her with impeding the government. So if she was so badly performing, and so what I want to say is, if you hire an attorney or CPA to do your taxes, that is not a secure thing for you not to get in trouble. And I would warn anybody going forward when they do that they better make sure their attorney or CPA is above board.
Well, and I think we've mentioned this too, even in the beginning of the podcast series, that Cheryl employed professionals to actually safeguard her interest. She wasn't involved in that sort of level of day-to-day accounting. She was the big picture overall, and that's if they could track her down to talk to her about it. So she's the first one to admit she took her eye off the ball. And I agree with you, Dean. If there was a case to answer, they would have, and they had the proof and the evidence, they would have charged with tax fraud, and they didn't. And I think that says a lot. So from your point of view, did you want her to take the plea deal?
At that point, I didn't know what the plea deal was going to entail. I think she was to the point where she just wanted to get it over with. I think she should have fought it. It would have been a complicated case. It would have been hard to have a jury understand the complications, but you're exactly right. All her professionals, including Brandy and Al and all those people, were supposed to be setting up things that were legal. Cheryl never evaded taxes. She paid every tax or everything that she was ever ordered to pay on any of the tax forms. We would get stacks of the tax return forms, and we'd all had to sign them. I had to sign mine. The kids have to sign theirs. Cheryl would sign 20 or 30 of them. And one time we was in Vegas for my birthday, because my birthday was on October 15th, which was tax day. And that morning, or the morning before that, we got them overnighted to us. We signed them all and overnighted them back to Charlie, who was her tax accountant, who worked under Al Davis and who turned out to be a really good guy. So I just think it's ironic that you got Al Davis and who you hired as the CPA to look out for you, and then they don't even charge him with any kind of crimes, and they allege that he cost the government $44 million, and then they come after Cheryl. So it's ironic that it happened that way.
The only witness they did have was Brandy Wheeler, who was the embezzler, who was the one that was on record as having stolen, and it was convicted. So it's absolutely ludicrous that this could happen. I think most people listening to this will find it quite scary about how it could happen. I'm going to jump you forward a little bit to that day in court where Cheryl's there and she's, before the judge and the plea deal's been done, but she doesn't know what she's going to get. Did you think in a realistic world that she was going to end up having to go to prison?
In reality, I knew it was a possibility, but in height of that, they asked in the plea agreement, she agreed to pay a big lump sum amount of money to pay taxes on an apartment that she didn't even own, and they forced her to pay that. And I thought maybe she paid that, and maybe she would get probation, but in reality, the judge slammed her pretty hard.
So were you shocked when he handed down an 18 months prison sentence?
I was shocked by the 18 months. I mean, he got to read all their allegations. We never got to rebut any of that stuff. So it's like when they filed their thing with the newspaper and they put it on their website, they can allege everything they want to allege against somebody, and it's not true. So when you go to the U.S. Attorney's Office website and you look up U.S. versus V. Cheryl Womack, you'll think she was the biggest tax cheat in all the world, and that she evaded taxes, she committed tax fraud, and that was out there. So that's what they wanted to paint the picture of. But the truth and the reality of it all, that she didn't either evade taxes or defraud the government, because she did pay what she was ordered to pay. And even above and beyond that, when they decided to make her pay for an apartment that she didn't even own.
Unfortunately, we live in a day and an age where the media gets to paint a certain narrative. Whether it happens to be true is unfortunately irrelevant. And we're seeing that in this day and age. So she's got the sentence. I mean, you guys are all in shock. You have 2 children from a previous relationship. How did you break that to your children as well, having to explain this situation? Did you sit down and have that conversation?
I did. Both my children are grown, so they kind of understood they didn't understand the details of the case, but I kind of outlined them that she was kind of getting the shaft. I actually walked them through the case a little bit, from prior to indictment, when Brandy stealing her money, who turned on her, and told a bunch of lies, and they tried. I guarantee you the government spent over $3 to $5 million trying to investigate this case. They made numerous trips to California. They made numerous trips to the Cayman Islands. They made numerous trips to New York City in trying to find a blatant tax evasion or tax fraud case. Whereas, I mean, 2 scariest words in the whole thing for anybody listening to this podcast is Cayman Islands. And how she got to Cayman Islands is that the insurance company, she wanted to set up a reinsurance company, which means that she would take more losses and spread them out more on her insurance business with trucking insurance. And the Fireman's Fund Insurance Company told her how to set this captive up. They didn't have captives in Delaware and North Dakota and Nevada like they do now in the United States. So you had to set them up offshore. And she was actually doing a business down there, and they told her what bank to go to, what attorneys to use, so it's all legal. And she's like, okay, that's perfect for me, and that's fine. So looking back on that, anybody who's involved in offshore captive insurance or anything like that, beware, because they'll come after you.
Even though you've been advised that you're doing everything legally and was operating very successfully for many, many years. So what were your kids' actual reactions, Dean, when you told them?
They were in awe. I mean, they're starstruck that they would come after Cheryl, and they felt bad for me and felt bad for her. What else could they say? Sorry. I hope everything comes out all right, and she'll be stronger on the other side. I mean, both my kids understood that anything can happen to anybody. They'll find a crime if they want to find a crime on anybody.
So during that 30 days while Cheryl's wrapping everything up before she has to surrender, did you find that really tough, those 30 days? Because I can imagine at this point she's going to be stressed. She's not going to be delightful to live with. I would have thought this would have been really difficult.
No, actually I didn't. I was scared for her because I knew she was scared. But being sent to a camp, when we got the letter that she was going to a camp, I felt a lot better about it. It's not a hardcore prison. And I started researching, and I researched camps. I researched where she was going. I found out it was a woman's camp next to a men's prison. So I felt good that she's not going to be in with a bunch of hardcore felons. I mean, there are some hardcore felons in camp that have been in a system for 20, 30 years, but they've earned their way to come to a camp so they can get ready to transition back into society. And I think that gives them an opportunity to kind of figure out that life is not like it was in medium or maximum security prisons. So to answer your story about Cheryl, 30 days, we started just getting things in order. And one good thing that was weird about the whole thing is Cheryl's sister lives in Belleville, Illinois, which is about 30 minutes from the prison. So I had a place to stay. I had a place to go visit. I had a place to vent. So that was one good thing that we got set up with them, that I could come there with my dogs and stay and go visit Cheryl on a weekly basis. I could stay the night there if I wanted to, or I'd drive back home. But I knew it was going to be tough for her. But like a lot of people said, you're going to run to prison before you get out of there. And pretty much she was running to prison on her side when she left.
So she does talk about that in her podcast Drop and Roll, that when the day comes for self-surrender, she's there early and she sort of doesn't want to say goodbye to you again. She sort of basically runs out of the car and just keeps going. But she did expect to be able to have visitation that weekend. So were you shocked to find out, because you're sitting on the other side waiting to be able to come and visit, and she's got no way of getting hold of you?
I was shocked, but not surprised. I worked for the federal government as a USDA federal meat inspector, and I know the quagmire that involved in that. And after finding out later about the guy who was supposed to approve all the business and everything, that weekend she did drop and roll. She actually said, "Pull up to the door and I'll see you later." That night or the next night, I thought I was going to get, I think it was a Thursday that I dropped her off, and I thought maybe Saturday I'd get to go visit her. But one of the other girls' husbands called me and said, "Hey, this is so-and-so. I just want to let you know that you're not going to get to visit your wife this weekend." And I said, "Okay, thanks." And he said, "It happens a lot." So I said, "Okay, I'll just wait to hear from her." And the only way, I can't call the prison, I can't call her. So I had the unknown of not knowing if she's okay or not. But he told me she was okay and said to tell you that she's fine and everything's good and she's in processing. So I felt good about that. So I could talk to her sister and her husband, kind of vent a little bit, but I stayed there that weekend and I drove home. And then over that next week, I got approved and I went the following weekend and visited her.
It sounds like Cheryl's sister and husband-in-law were actually a great support to you, and an unexpected one, because they weren't in regular contact. Did you find that surprising?
No, not at all. Mike and Rachel both are great people, and they understood. They understood what happened, and Cheryl called them and talked to them, and I talked to them, and everything was fine. They welcomed me in. We had dinners, and we'd go out to eat, and we'd do things, and I'd leave my dogs there when I'd go to the prison sometimes and visit her, and then drive back over there and pick my dogs up, either stay the night and go back the next day, or I'd come back to Kansas City.
Let's talk a little bit about the visitation process for a little bit, because I would imagine for most people it's quite daunting the first time you go to see someone you care about in prison. Do you want to walk us through what it was like from your point of view?
I found it not challenging, but exhilarating to an extent that I get to see her. I didn't know what to expect when I went there. They have a whole list of things on the website that you can and can't do, can't bring in, can't wear. So I made sure I read everything that I could get for the right. I could wear blue jeans. You couldn't wear open-toed shoes. You couldn't wear shorts or sandals. So you had to dress kind of appropriately. And then when I got there, I had to figure out how to load the card, which for the vending machines. And they had a little kiosk there that you stick the money in and it loads these cards and you can use the card to buy. I don't know. I ended up loving Mrs. Colander's chicken pot pie. So we hoped that they had those when we went there. But you could buy candy and uh, Cokes and pop and water and just everything. The only thing you could bring into the prison was a key to your car or fob and your money for your card, and you couldn't bring cash. So you had to put the cash onto your card as soon as you got in there. And then you walk into this big spacious room and they'll call her up and she comes in and you can hug her, can't kiss her, can't do any of that. Other way you maybe can give her a peck, but you can't like lock onto it or nothing. So you just sit down and start talking and see how everything went. I mean, the rules were lax at first, but they got tighter and then they got lax. And it just depending on what guard was on duty and how stringent they wanted to be as far as PDA. I never did any of that. We just sat there and talked, and I was understanding what she was doing, and I just listened a lot about how she was dealing with it. And then when we got set up on the telephone system, that was when an email system, that was when we really could communicate during the week. So the visits were good, but the other stuff was just as important.
Did you ever find the visits to be a little bit awkward? I know you've been together for a very long time at this point, but because you're in a different surrounding, you're being watched, you're being monitored. Was it awkward in any way or no?
Not at all. I mean, it was just I knew how it had to be, and we just I mean, we can go outside and sit on the lawn tables, and they had a fence around that to keep kids from running off. But we just sat and talked and ate some snacks and asked her what she was doing for the following week. And she got excited. The reason she was successful there is because she got involved. She wasn't just a bump on a log and just trying to raise hell and cause trouble for everybody. She wanted to make an impression that she wanted to help these girls, and I think overall you could see that she did.
Cheryl has shared with me that you would do all sorts of different things to actually help cheer her up. Talk to me a little bit about the jumpers and where that idea came from.
You mean the Christmas sweaters? Okay, so we have a friend. They had two boys, and we were going to make Christmas sweaters one day, and my brother was here, and so we went and bought a bunch of T-shirts, and we got some glitter and glue, and I made a stick Christmas tree on a shirt, put glitter on it, and put some little balls on there. And then I wore it, and I wore it underneath my vest. And when we got there, I undid the vest, and I told her Merry Christmas, and I showed her the Christmas sweater that we had made. And it turned into a thing I had to do for every holiday. And
Now, I'm
then, of
sure
course,
she would have been very, very pleasantly surprised, and knowing Cheryl would have burst into tears. Would I be correct in thinking that?
she was pretty excited about it. We would
She,
you could actually take pictures there. They had a photographer that could take pictures, and they never did. People never did give me a hard time about wearing them in. I wore one for her birthday the following week after Christmas, and then I think the next one I wore was for Valentine's Day, and then I wore one for St. Patrick's Day, and then the next day I went back to visit her. I wore one for our anniversary. So then I think that was 4 or 5 that I did. That was pretty cool. And if you have pictures of them, it's a pretty cool deal that it was a surprise. And everybody ended up wanting to see which ones I wore or which ones I had on the time that Cheryl was, hey, Dean's going to wear a new sweater, new shirt. And a lot of people I became kind of friends with in the visitation room. Some people would show up, and there's people that live close by that could come and visit on a continual basis, and I felt sorry for the ones that couldn't afford it. And I was lucky enough that we could afford. I could visit her on a weekly basis and make the phone calls and the emails because it cost money, and a lot of those people didn't have money. But um, that's basically the Christmas T-shirts. Ugly Christmas sweater was pretty cool.
and from the sound, very, very well appreciated. So, how did you find that you handled the loneliness while she was away? Because even though you were in a fortunate situation, as you say, that you could have semi-regular contact, you've kind of gone from being together pretty much 24/7 for all these years.
You know what? I was so busy with doing stuff and getting ready for the next visit that I didn't have a lot of time. I mean, she'd give me chores to do, go visit this person, write to this attorney, write to she was fighting back through me, and I was sending letters to the inspector general and stuff like that on how she was being treated. And I even wrote a couple to the warden about the visitation because the counselor that was supposed to approve those was absent. He had been put on leave. She didn't have the counselor who was supposed to approve these for different people to come visit her. So it was basically me for the first 2 or 3 months until he got back on duty. And actually, after I wrote the warden, they approved. They approved 6 or 7 people. You could have up to 10 people that could come visit. And once we got that approved, other people could go visit.
Did you find that you had support from family or friends, or did you find it was quite an isolating experience being on the other side?
Tremendous support from everybody. I mean, there wasn't nobody that was negative about it, nobody was derogatory about it. I'm sure there was some naysayers or she deserved that or something like that. But for the most part, all our friends stuck by it, sent cards. She was the card queen. I mean, she got 20, 30 cards a week from people, friends and associates, and even people that shouldn't even know that were sending cards and for Christmas, her birthday, all those things. So no, I didn't feel isolated at all. I didn't have to defend her one bit because they knew that once they learned what happened, people understood that it was a government deal.
A lot of marriages don't survive something like this. It's like there's been a death of a child. The statistics are high, unfortunately, and against you in a way. Did that ever cross your mind that this was just getting too tough, or that you needed a break from it? Because you're both living and breathing this now for years.
No, I think I embraced it. I think I embraced it because she needed the support, and I was here for that support. And whatever she wanted me to do or asked me to do, I would try to get it done. And I kind of took it as a challenge, so to speak. Um, I did write some pretty good letters. I did get some good results. I mean, she kept me informed. We got to talk quite a bit through email and telephone conversations. So, I mean, she had so many minutes she could talk a week. So we kind of had to proportion those out. I mean, for example, one Saturday I went to visit her and spent the day there. And then that night, me and my brother got on our bikes and we went to Wyoming. And we were doing a bike ride out to Red Lodge, Montana. I was riding through the hills of Wyoming and my phone rings on my bike. I pulled off the side of the road because I knew it was from the prison. So it was Cheryl calling to talk. So I'm doing 65 mile an hour down the road and I hear the phone ring. I see the number. So I hit the brakes. And I told my brother earlier, I said, Cheryl might call. So if I hit the brakes, it ain't because there's an accident or nothing. I pull off the side of the road. And so I'm walking around out in the hills of Wyoming talking to my wife, which is not very good coverage, but we got to talk and she asked me how I was doing, and we were having fun. So I didn't stop. I didn't stop living. As a matter of fact, I think I did more living in that period of time, trying to make sure she was safe and happy and comfortable doing what she needed to do. And then I continued to do it. I mean, I raised my tomatoes. I went to the farm. I did all the same stuff I always do.
And you also, I know, used to do some Facebook Lives when you came out of the prison and visiting. Why did you feel the importance of doing that?
We had a lot of friends on Facebook, and we both had friends and get out of there. And then I would be driving and I'd put my phone in my thing. And I was driving, I would just start talking and saying what Cheryl was doing and how she was getting along and if there's any problems that week. I just felt it was good to keep people informed. I mean, they all knew she was in lockup. They're the same people that sent her cards. I mean, they're the same people that supported her through thick or thin, just like they supported me through thick or thin. So I thought it was important to let them know how Cheryl was going on. I didn't want them to wait 3 months and say, well, how's Cheryl? I got probably 60, 70 likes on it every week when I did it. And I think it was successful to do it that way.
I think it's a great way to also keep people informed. Otherwise it's a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, a lot of pressure on you to try and keep people updated. Because as you said, not everyone could just go and visit in those first 3 months. You couldn't get a list reapproved. When she's sort of coming towards the end and you find out that she has an end date, was that exciting for you, or was it a little bit scary too? Because you've got the next round of unknown and the halfway house and probation periods.
Actually, no, it wasn't scary at all. It was actually, she gave me a lot of tasks to do because the halfway house is a joke. Supposedly, what I've read was that she wasn't even supposed to go to the halfway house. I drove out to the halfway house, which was in Lansing, Kansas, and I met with the director and asked her, why is my wife, she's over 65. She has a place to go. She has approved home plan and everything. So the conclusion of that whole thing was, I figured out, was that it was about money. So what they had to do is get Cheryl to go there and sign in so they could charge the Bureau of Prisons for her as an inmate there, so they get their money. And then as soon as she got there, she got released to come back here and stay the night. Actually, she stayed an extra 30 days in the prison because she didn't want to spend the time in the halfway house. She could have completed her whole time in the prison, and just walked out of there a free person, never had to worry about halfway house, which was a hellhole because it's not just for federal prisoners, it's for state prisoners, it's for people that have committed murder, bank robbery, carjackings, and all that. They all live in that house, and there was like nine or 10 women, and the rest of them, 130 of them were men. So she felt threatened.
Scary.
It's a big metal building, and these people would leave and they'd come back, and you were just kind of afraid to walk into the door with all the misfits sitting out front.
So did you find any of the prison policies and the way that they're structured, did you find that made it difficult for you to have ongoing communication with your wife?
Not really. Other than on her end, I had to wait for her to call me. But on email, she could send them, and then I could respond to them. And then I could also send her emails, and she could respond to them. And understand that the prison is recording everything you say, keeping copies of all your emails, making sure you're not doing any kind of business and not trying to set somebody up or trying to break them out or nothing like that. So you had to watch what you said. But then again, there wasn't really nothing to say other than what I explained to her on the phones about how the Bureau of Prisons and the halfway houses work. And she was really upset that she even had to go, but it ended up not being that big a deal. But she just felt like she shouldn't have had to win, and I agree with her.
So when she actually finally comes home, what's that like? Does the dynamic change between the two of you, or is it just business as usual?
Business as usual. Well, I'll take that back for a second. She had to do paper for a year. She had to go down and report to her federal probation officer, and she had some conditions she had to meet, like she had to provide them their tax returns, and then she had to do other things. And I think the biggest thing that she lost that she really, 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 really wanted to do is her right to vote. She didn't care about. I mean, there's things I had to do. I had to watch where I have a concealed carry license, and I had to make sure that there was no weapons in the car when she drove, or things I didn't want to get her in trouble for if I was doing them. So when she came home, it was like we had to regroup and we had to decide where we're going forward and how we're going to be successful again. I mean, you just got to start over. I mean, it wasn't like starting life over again. It's just that you had to figure out, you want to sit here and mope, or you want to get off your ass and go do something. And she picked the latter, and she has it. She had done it. It took her a while. She wanted to write a book. She wanted to do this nonprofit that she's doing with the Women of Worth, and she still wants to do some 3/4 way houses. And she met some good people there. There's still people. We got people trying to call her and see if I'll put money on her books at a county prison 2 weeks ago.
So when Cheryl first comes home, and even though she's under probation for the next year, did you find that she had been institutionalized in any way, or that she had changed from the process?
Not really. No. She was the same old feisty Cheryl. She came out of there fighting, and she'll go to her grave fighting. She wants to conquer everybody else and not let somebody else conquer her, and that's her challenge. I mean, it's hard sometimes in our relationship because you have to give and take, and I have to stand up for myself as well as she stands up for herself, because we do have spats, as any normal husband and wife do. I don't think it changed her one bit, other than showing compassion for some of the girls that are locked up in that prison system, because some of them are treated unfairly, and other ones, I mean, there is favoritism, there is racial issues, there is minorities and stuff going on in there, that cliques that all play to each other. But I think she kind of avoided all those, and by being a teacher and instructor in some of the civics classes and stuff like that. And then when she became a town driver, that was the primo job. So I think she hit the pinnacle there. Other than that, I think she's doing fine. She did fine. We got along great. And at least I didn't have to drive 5.5 hours over and 5.5 hours back in the same day. Out of 57 weeks, I missed one day, one weekend visitation in all that time. And that included the trip to Wyoming, because we left on a Sunday and I got back on a Friday and went to visit her on Saturday morning. Me and the dog got up at 3 o'clock in the morning, got in the truck, drove over to Greenville, which is 5.5 hours away on the other side of St. Louis. And then we visited for a couple hours. And I think I went back to her sister's house and stayed the night, and then went back the next day and visited and came back home. You just had to plan. You had to think about, I mean, it was at the point where I had to go over there. I had to go see her to make sure she knew that I was still supporting her. She didn't lose that ability to know that somebody's there for her.
Tell me, Dean, with everything that was going on, and you know, as we've said, we're a few years out of this now. I know that there are those people in Cheryl's life that don't understand why she is still pursuing all this in the respect of writing the book and doing this podcast, and in a way still living and breathing this experience. Now, having spoken to her, I know it's still very much on the surface of her emotions of what happened to her. Do you find that hard, that she hasn't just closed the door on this and just moved on from it?
Well, she has. I mean, she has moved on from it in the sense that she set this charity up, and that is one thing she's pursuing. But other than the fact that she does care for the people that are there, even though she don't know anybody there that's there now, she knows the conditions they live in and the conditions outside of prison, that maybe she could help them understand how to be more successful, and if she could save one person out of that whole deal and keep them from going back to prison and make them successful, I think that's what her goal is.
With hindsight, is there anything that you would go back and change throughout this process from your point of view?
You mean during her prison time?
Or even before it, is there anything you can think, well, I wish I'd done that differently? Or are you of the opinion that things have played out the way they were meant to play out?
I look back at the case, I don't think anybody realizes how invested I was in trying to help her defend herself. And we're still dealing with some stuff, but it's hard to find a good attorney. And the ones that really want to fight for you, you got to look at their relationships, you got to look at their history. I mean, it's almost easier to go get an ambulance chasing attorney that has no experience in the criminal side to fight for you, because he has to learn his side of it or her side of it to defend you. And these guys that already think they know it all, and they're not going to do that. You can't do that. The government won't do that. Well, you don't know if they will or not, because you aren't fighting back against them. Every time you send a piece of paper to your attorney, he charges you. Every time you talk to your attorney, he charges you. So that adds up pretty quick. And you're talking $4 or $5 million. A lot of people don't have the money to fight themselves. And you aren't going to defeat the federal government with unlimited funds. I mean, I'm telling you, they spent, what did I say, $5 million to fight this case? And what did they get out of it? Her flesh for 14 months? Wow, isn't that great? Now, how many people you think in the citizenry would look at that and go, that doesn't weigh very good, because the government spent $5 million and you only got her in there for 14 months and you got a few $100,000 out of her for some taxes she owed that she didn't pay. And it's crazy that the manpower and the hours they put into this case, and they didn't charge her with tax fraud or tax evasion. They charge her with impeding government.
And plus, it costs to have her actually in prison.
It did.
Yeah, it's costing the taxpayer.
I looked it up. It's $180,000 a year for each prisoner in there.
Scary.
Food and the labor they pay these guys to walk around there and pretend like they're guards. I mean, it's stupid that they send them to this place when they could get the same effect out of them, put them on electronic monitoring, leave them at home, and they could actually go to work and pay their restitution. When they're locked up, they can't pay their restitution. If people owe money, Brandy Wheeler, she had never paid her restitution off. She still owes Cheryl $300,000 or $400,000.
Tell me, Dean, how do you see the future now unfolding for you and Cheryl?
She's 74. I'm 63. I'm involved in my farming, my farmers markets, my growing my tomatoes. She's the one that keeps busy. I mean, she's the one that's trying to always do something with the Airbnbs or rental houses, or she gets stressed out about it. But I mean, that's what she works under pressure. She has for her whole life. And the more pressure she is, the more she responds. And I just have to support her on whatever she's doing and try to make it successful, and us becoming more successful, and try to replenish some of the money that was taken from her. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of that.
Thank you for listening to How to Go to Camp with Katrina McLarin and Cheryl Womack. For more support, check out the Women of Worth website, www.womenofworthwow.org, where you'll find helpful resources, including Cheryl's books, Mummy Loves You Everywhere and How to Go to Camp, Surviving in a Women's Federal Prison. Whether you're preparing for the journey or supporting someone through it, remember there's guidance, hope and a community ready to help you navigate this path.